Hello everybody. Well, I bought the WoodMax snowblower, and this is the 72-inch model, and I thought I'd give you the rundown on this thing. When it comes, it comes crated in this angle iron crate, and they got plastic around the outside and over the top, I suppose just to keep the dirt from blowing in there. Now, I found the WoodMax company online, and they had good reviews on this snowblower. And it caught my attention because the website said that it was designed in Buffalo, New York, and I live near Buffalo. So they kind of drew me in with that advertising, saying that it's designed in Buffalo, New York. Well, later on I found out that it's actually manufactured in China. Now, that doesn't bother me too much anymore. We've lost a lot of our manufacturing in the United States. But this snowblower did come with some good reviews, and I figured being designed in Buffalo is better than not being designed in Buffalo, so I went ahead and bought it. So here we are, we're getting this angle iron taken apart here so that we can get that snowblower out of that crate. Now, this blower is attached to the tractor with the 3-point hitch, and it's run with the PTO. So as soon as I get this angle iron off here, I'm going to back the tractor up, and we'll hook up to this thing and lift it up so that we can take that cage off from there. So I'll raise it up here, and then I'll see what it's going to take to get it out of that angle iron crate. Now, it turned out that I had to do a little bit of head scratching to get that thing out of there. It was pretty tight, the way that it was put in there, and I figured, well, it went in, so it's got to come out. And so finally I took the skid shoe off the right side there. There you can see down at the bottom right there, I took that shoe off, and I was able to work that thing around and finally pull it off one end and swing it out of the way. There, that wasn't so bad. Now, when you live where I do, it's kind of nice to have a heated shop. And that first bay in my garage is heated, and so I'm going to drive this thing in there, and I can assemble it in a nice warm garage, because we're supposed to have a high of 0 tomorrow, and at night it'll be well below 0. So I'm going to put it inside there, and tomorrow I'll get up and get to work on it. Now, when I get this thing put together, I plan on attaching it to this Case 40 horse tractor right here. All right, good morning everybody. So we'll get started here. We've got the chute to get mounted on the top here, and they've got everything packed up pretty nicely in cardboard and then this bubble wrap, and everything was good. There was no scratches or any problems like that. And in this box here, you've got your gearbox for the chute rotation. Okay, so to mount that chute, we've got to loosen these 6 bolts here and then slide those guide bearings out so that we can set the chute down on there. So there we go, we slide these over, and now when we grab the chute and set it up on there, we can set it down in there and then slide those bearings back over. So we'll get it set down in there, and there's plenty of room there to get it set in there, and just kind of jostle around a little bit to make sure it's in there just right. And then there's a little rib right there that rides in those guide bearings, and so now we'll push those bearings back in. And I noticed that they didn't go all the way to that rib there, those bearings, and so I took a little hammer and kind of tapped on a little bit to get it just right. You don't want it so tight that the chute will bind when you're trying to turn it. And it looks like it's pretty free. It's not going to come off from there, so we're looking good there. This is the gearbox that'll turn the chute, and they've got a gear and pinion style set up here that only takes 3 turns of the crank to turn that chute 180 degrees. So we start by putting this bolt that this whole thing's going to pivot on, And then on the other end there's two bolts that slip up in there with lock nuts, and that allows you to slide that gearbox over to engage on the sprocket there. So I'll show you what I mean here. You can see that gearbox, I just pushed it right in there to the sprocket, and then you tighten those bolts down. Here's another view of it. Just slides over. Pretty simple and effective setup. And you can get things adjusted just right so that that thing will spin real easy. Next we'll unpack the rod and crank that's going to hook up to this gearbox to turn the chute. That rod will extend up over your roll bar there so that you can turn that chute while you're sitting on the tractor seat. And I've got it just hooked up temporarily there, but it spins pretty easy. Next we'll hook up this linkage for the chute deflector, and I've got it one bolt in the top there, and the next thing we'll do is get the one in the bottom. Now it goes through, and then they've got a spacer, and then the rod goes next, and then that spacer. Well, the problem I was having was that the spacer wouldn't fit in there, and so I had to take the bolt out and kind of tap this over just a little bit to give me a little bit more room in there to get that spacer in there. It's a pretty rugged design here on this snowblower. Everything they've done is built to last, I think. It's got a little handle that you release, and then you manually set that angle of that deflector there. But it's a nice system, I think. Now I'll take off a couple of guards so you can see down in there. And the next thing we'll do is adjust the chain. And we've got to, it looks like it's pretty tight there now, but I want to just check it just to see how it feels. And so there's your adjuster there. And the book says to push down on it until it stops and then tighten it up. So that's just a matter of having it tight enough but not too tight. And of course I think after you run the snowblower a little bit, it'd be a good idea to check that, and things are going to stretch a little bit and loosen, I would think. So I think I've got it adjusted about the way it was before I loosen things up. So now we'll take off this other guard, and we're going to get some oil on that sprocket, oil up that chain. So I've got some chainsaw bar oil here that will lubricate that chain nicely. Now we'll grease that auger torque limiter, and then there's a fitting on the end of the shaft here. So I'll grease up all three of those bearings on the snowblower, and then of course there's two grease fittings on the PTO shaft. Now they say to put a little thin coating of grease on that rib that rides on those guide bearings there. So just put a little grease on my finger and we'll wipe that around there and thin it out all the way around on that chute. Well, there's nothing more frustrating than one of these chutes that binds up and won't turn. It's a good system on this blower, I think. Okay, so you can turn that shaft real easy, and I'll add a little more of that bar oil on the sprocket here. The cast iron gearbox takes 1 quart of 80/90 gear oil, which I've already filled it up. Well, the only thing left to do is to hook up that drive shaft to the machine and to the PTO on the tractor. And I had to cut the shaft off. There's instructions in the book that comes with the blower on how to trim that shaft to the proper length for your setup. Or you can call WoodMax and they'll give you the condensed version of how to cut that shaft off. Okay, so this is probably what you've been waiting for, to see this thing in operation. And it just happened that my son came along just as I was putting that new shear pin in. First thing I did was back into a big pile of frozen snow and ice, and an ice ball jammed in there and broke a shear pin. So I learned a little something there, You've got to be careful when you're backing into a pile that's been sitting there for a long time and is all frozen. There might be a big ball of ice in there, and it can lodge and break one of those shear pins. Alright, back to the video. And my son helped me make some adjustments on this blower here. In the book it says to adjust it so that the leading edge hits the ground before the shoes in the back. And I had it tipped back too far, so he's got that thing adjusted down now. And I don't know if you can tell, but he's actually cutting through solid snow and ice there. He's blowing some pretty heavy stuff right there. And you can see that blower really puts it out there. He's into a pile that I piled up with my snowplow here a week or two ago. Right there's where I broke that shear pin. Okay, now he's up in back of the barn where there's, I don't know, 6 or 8 inches of snow. And again, he's got that blower all the way down. And he's shearing right through, I don't know, 3 or 4 inches of hard-packed snow and ice. And that machine is just gobbling it up, no problem. So my first impressions of this WoodMax snowblower are all positive. I think it's a well-made machine. It's heavy-duty. And I think it's going to do a good job for me. So thanks for watching, everybody.